The message wasn't supposed to change Richard's life. It was just a simple, unexpected text that appeared on his cracked phone screen at 10 a.m. right after he had finally managed to get his daughter to sleep. He stared at it, confused. The number wasn't saved. The words felt too direct, too intentional to be a mistake. For a moment, he thought it might be some kind of scam, but something about it, something quiet and unsettling, made his chest tighten. Richard Joyce wasn't the kind of man who entertained mysterious life, as a single dad had trained him to focus only on what was real, what was necessary: bills, school fees, groceries, survival. Love, for him, was something he poured entirely into his daughter, Lily. There was no space for anything else. And yet, that message stayed on his mind all night. The next morning, another message came. Same number, same calm tone. Come to the Grand Avalon Hotel, 7 p.m. Don't be late. No explanation, no signature, just instructions. Richard almost ignored it. He should have ignored it, but something didn't let him. Maybe it was the memory of the woman he had met the night before, the woman who had walked into the small cafe where he worked late shifts. Her elegance completely out of place in that quiet, worn-down corner of the city. She had Saturday alone, silent, watching him, not in a strange way, but in a way that felt searching. Her name was Joyce. She had said it so softly, like it carried weight. They talked only briefly, about nothing, really. Life, coffee, his daughter. Her eyes had softened when he mentioned Lily, and before leaving, she had said something that didn't make sense at the time. You deserve more than survival. Richard, he didn't even know why he remembered that. He barely knew her, and yet now, holding the second message, something clicked. Joyce, the name, the timing. That evening, after dropping Lily at his neighbor's place, Richard found himself standing in front of the Grand Avalon Hotel, a place so luxurious it felt like another world entirely. He adjusted his worn jacket, suddenly aware of how out of place he looked. People like him didn't belong here, but he walked in anyway. Inside, everything was silent, polished, intimidating. A man in a suit approached him almost immediately. Mr. Richard, he nodded. Mrs. Joyce is expecting you. Mrs. Joyce. That's when Richard realized this wasn't about the woman. This was something else entirely, something bigger. He was led into a private lounge, and there, standing by the window, was a man whose presence alone seemed to command the entire room. Tall, immaculate, cold. His back was turned at first, but when he finally faced Richard, the air shifted. His eyes were sharp, calculating, almost ruthless. Richard Joyce, the man said slowly, as if testing the name. Interesting coincidence. Richard frowned. You asked me to come. The man gave a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. No, my daughter did. Richard's heart skipped. Daughter, Joyce. I'm Victor Joyce, the man continued. And you spent last night with someone very important to me. The words hit harder than they should have. Richard immediately shook his head. Nothing happened. We just talked. Victor stepped closer, his gaze piercing. I know exactly what happened. I have people who make sure I know everything. Silence stretched between them, heavy, uncomfortable. Richard clenched his fist slightly, trying to stay calm. Then why am I here? Victor studied him for a long moment before answering. Because my daughter doesn't get involved with men like you. Men like you? Richard felt the sting but didn't react. He was used to that tone, that judgment. And yet, Victor continued, she came home different, softer, distracted. She spoke about you. That surprised him, truly. Victor's expression darkened. That concerns me. So what is this? Richard asked quietly. A warning? Victor smirked slightly. Call it curiosity. I wanted to see what kind of man could affect her like that. Richard took a breath. I'm just a father trying to raise his kid. For the first time, something flickered in Victor's eyes. Interest. A father. Yes. Victor walked past him slowly, as if considering something deeply. Tell me, what would you do for your child? Anything. Richard answered instantly. Victor stopped, turned, and for a split second, something shifted in his cold demeanor. Anything, he repeated softly. Then, just as quickly, the ruthlessness returned. Good, because from this moment on, your life and your daughter's future depends on the answer to that question. Richard's stomach dropped. What does that mean? Victor smiled faintly. It means, Richard Joyce, you've just stepped into a world you don't understand. And suddenly, what started as a simple message felt like the beginning of something dangerous, something he might not be able to escape. Richard left the hotel that night with more questions than answers and a quiet fear he couldn't shake. Nothing Victor Joyce said was direct, yet every word carried a hidden threat. But what haunted him the most wasn't the billionaire's cold warning. It was the memory of her, Joyce, the softness in her eyes, the way she had listened when no one else ever did. That wasn't fake. That couldn't have been part of some game, right? The next few days felt normal on the surface. Work, home, Lily's laughter filling the tiny apartment. But underneath it all, something had changed. Richard felt watched, not in a paranoid way but in a way that made silence feel heavier, like something was coming. And then it did. A black car stopped outside his apartment building. At first, he ignored it until a man stepped out, holding a small envelope. No signature, the man said, handing it over. But you want to read it. Richard hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a single photograph. His heart stopped. It was Lily. It was Lily, safe, smiling, unaware. But it wasn't the photo itself that terrified him. It was the message written behind it. Anything. Richard, his hands started shaking. This wasn't curiosity anymore. This was control. That night, he did the only thing he could think of. He went to find her. Joyce. He needed answers. He needed the truth. When she opened the door and saw him standing there, desperate, angry, scared, her expression broke instantly. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. My daughter, Richard said, his voice trembling. Your father, what is he doing? Tears filled her eyes. I tried to stop him. Stop him from what? He demanded. She stepped closer, her voice barely audible. He's testing you. Richard frowned. See, testing me. He doesn't believe in people, she said. He believes in power, control, loyalty that can be bought or broken. Her voice cracked. But you confused him. Richard shook his head. So this is a game? No, she whispered. It's worse, because if you fail, he won't just walk away. Silence, heavy, suffocating. Then Richard asked the one question he had been avoiding. And you? Joyce looked at him, really looked at him. I wasn't supposed to care, she said softly. That night, it wasn't planned. But you were different. For a moment, everything felt still. To people caught between something dangerous and something real. Then suddenly her phone rang. She looked at the screen and went pale. It's him, she whispered. Richard's chest tightened. Joyce answered slowly. Yes, father. A pause. Her eyes filled with fear. I understand. She hung up. Silence. What did he say? Richard asked. Joyce looked at him, her voice breaking completely this time. He said, the next move is yours. Richard's mind raced. What does that mean? But Joyce didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached for his hand and whispered something that changed everything. He already knows what you'll choose. And in that moment, Richard realized something terrifying. This was never about control. This was about forcing him to prove whether love makes a man strong or destroys him completely.